Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, horror, I'm talking about Robert Bloch's Psycho. So Psycho is definitely one of those books that has been eclipsed by the film that it spawned. So the novel came out in 1959. Hitchcock's movie of Psycho followed hot on the heels in 1960. And whilst the novel is excellent, I thought it was a really, really good book. Clearly, over time, it's been eclipsed by the movie, and the movie is still very well respected, well loved, revered even today. Whereas the novel, whilst it is still in print, I don't think is nearly as well known. In fact, I suspect Psycho is one of those films that many people don't even realise is based on a book. What's really interesting, though, about reading the book is that it does give you a slightly different perspective on the events. So the story is exactly the same. There's two kind of differences. One is the fact that the character played in the movie by Janet Leigh, who in the film was Marion Crane, in the book is Mary Crane. I'm not sure why they changed the name, other than the fact that Marion does sound a bit better, to my ear anyway. And secondly, the character of Norman Bates is physically very different in the book than he is in the movie. So in the movie, obviously, is played by Anthony Perkins. He's, kind of very slender. In the book, he's described a number of times as being overweight. But the events are very similar. So as in the film, the character of Mary or Marion steals some money and is kind of on the run with it and ends up at the Bates Motel where she falls foul of Norman and his mother. And as in the film, various people come after her in order to try and figure out what's happened to her. Where there is a big difference between the book and the film is in the fact that you get a more of an insight into Norman's mind. So obviously in the film, you don't see that. You just see things from the exterior. In the book, whilst it is written from a third person perspective, there are some sequences which are kind of like stream of consciousness parts from Norman, where he's, thinking about his actions and things like that, and also playing out that conflict within his mind between his own will and his mother's will. And those work really, really well in the book. They're absolutely fascinating. One of the other things that's really interesting about both the book and the film is its relationship to the real life character of Ed Gein. So Ed Gein was a notorious serial killer who killed a number of women and made suits out of their skin. So his crimes came to light in 1957, 2 years before the book was published. But by that point, Robert Bloch had actually almost finished writing the book. And there is apparently, and I didn't pick up on it, but there is a very slight reference in one of the final chapters to Gein. But he certainly didn't inspire the book or the movie, although apparently Robert Bloch was quite taken aback between the similarities, or by the similarities between Norman Bates and Ed Gein. Gein did influence heavily a Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So if you've seen that movie, a lot of the kind of psychopathy and pathology in that comes from Ed Gein. One of the things I really, really liked about this book is how quickly it gets to the point. So it's not a long book, it's like 150 pages long. I read it in a morning and the action just moves along at an incredible pace, which makes it fantastically gripping and exciting all the way through. The prose is quite kind of plain and stripped down, so it lacks if you like, the kind of flourishes that Hitchcock brought to the movie. It's much simpler in the way that it tells its story. And indeed, the violence in the book is incredibly brief. So the scenes of violence are there, but they are much, much briefer and less graphic than the scenes of violence in the film. The shower scene, for example, which is one of the set pieces of the movie, is incredibly brief. It's it's not, the actual murder is not much more than a sentence in the book. So whereas the film is kind of notorious at the time for the graphic nature of that scene, in the book it's much more simply told, and it still manages to chill, but without being at all graphic. So yeah, I thought this was absolutely fantastic and definitely worth reading even if you've seen the film, and in fact, especially if you're a fan of the film, because as I say, it does give a slightly different flavour to things, if you like, in terms of seeing more deeply into Norman's mind. Do let me know in the comments if you've read Psycho and what you thought of it. Bloch did write 2 sequels to it, neither of which have any relation to the film sequels that were made, which I need to read. I have read Psycho 2 years and years ago, but I'm keen to read it again because I enjoyed this so much. As always, hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.